Okay, can you guys see that?
Gotcha.
All right, perfect. So I'll just start now. Hi guys, my name is Keelyn Kotecki. I'm a colonial, oh wait, hold on, sorry. I just have to make sure everything's all right. So today I'm gonna be talking to you guys about colonial nesting birds and why some birds are stronger when nesting together. So back to the basics, colonies, what are they actually? So what are some examples of a colony in the natural world? When I think of colonies, I typically think of like an ant colony or like a bee colony, typically like insect related. But a colony is a group of individuals of the same species, like all birds, all ants, all bees, that live and interact together. So therefore, a bird colony is a large group of birds that hunt, forage, eat, and breed together. So then a little more back to the basics. So what does nesting entail? Nesting is when, in this case, a bird begins to build a nest and settle down in order to lay their eggs. Once they lay their eggs, they must sit on them for a certain amount of time every day in order for them to hatch. The act of sitting on the eggs to keep them warm so that they will hatch is called incubation. Another aspect of nesting is raising the young as well. So to put it simply, a nest is a place to raise and hatch. A nest is a place to raise young, and nesting is the act of laying eggs and raising them. This occurs at the same time of the year every year. For common roseate terns, this time period starts in May, but they can re-nest into July as well. So they build the nest in May, and eggs start to be laid from June to July. After 21 to about 25 days, the eggs will hatch and a baby tern chick is born. The birds leave the colony in August once they have fledged. And to fledge means that a bird has developed wings that are capable of flight. So that's when they'll leave the colony. So now what is colonial nesting? How would we define colonial nesting? So based off of previous definitions that I just gave of colony and nesting, what would you think this means? Colonial nesting is when birds gather in large groups called the colony to lay their eggs during a certain time of the year. This time of the year is also called nesting season. So what makes up a colonial nesting colony? Each colonial nesting colony is unique in its own way. There are many different characteristics that can affect what and who make up a colony. Population size is a great example of this. A colony can consist of any number of birds, whether it's between 10 individuals or 2,000. There's even a colony of northern gannets in Scotland that has about 150,000 individuals. Another defining characteristic of a colony are the species within the colony. So a great example of this would be the Tern colony at Falkner Island that we help to manage. This colony is made up of two species, roseate terns and common terns. And despite being different species, they nest together and they help each other out. The number of males and the number of females can also change from colony to colony. For instance, on average, there are more females than males in roseate tern colonies. The ratio is actually 1.3 females to 1 male. But this number can be different for other species. And even the 1.3 slightly differ from roseate colony to roseate colony. And how individuals set up their territory is also important. In all true colonies, each nesting bird owns and defends a small territory around its nest, a territory that usually corresponds to the reach of its beak or its wings. So this means that based on the size of an individual or the species, territory size and location can be different for everybody. So why do birds form colonies? There are two main schools of thought for the reason as to why birds nest in colonies. These two schools of thought are preventing predators and also food and the sharing of information regarding food. But before we get into that, I just wanted to touch quickly on, again, what is a predator? Can anyone tell me what they think of when I say the word predator? I'm sure the first image that comes to mind is something that is like a little more ferocious, like a lion, a tiger, even a giant snake. And while these are all great examples of predators, colonial nesting colony predators are a bit different than what you might expect. As many of you likely know, a predator is an organism that kills and eats another organism. When this happens, it's called predation. So, since colonies are just large gatherings of birds, this would be essentially an easy dinner for a predator if the colony wasn't careful and didn't take precautions. They're very susceptible to predators. So, not only this, but the future population relies on these precautions since predators will often eat defenseless eggs and chicks. There are a few tactics that colonies use to help keep predators away. These are like mutual nest defense, location of the nest, and safety in numbers. The more birds, the better, and the more safe that they are. So, mutual nest defense. A common tactic that makes nesting in a colony beneficial is called mutual nest defense. This means that many birds, even if they are not the parents of the eggs, are available to defend a nest from predators. They're also able to detect predators more quickly. It's a group effort to stay alive, so the more eyes looking out for predators means a greater chance of finding the predator before it attacks. A good example of this would be like if you were playing hide and seek. The more people who are looking for the last person hiding, the easier it would be to find them. Out on Falkner Island, common terns are more aggressive than roseate terns, so they tend to be the ones that protect roseate terns from predators. So I feel like this would be a good example of mutual nest defense. So the location where the terns nest. Colonies have also discovered that individuals in the middle of the group are safer from predators than individuals that nest on the outsides of the group. So this is an advantage of colonial nesting for the more established individuals of the colony. The older, more experienced birds who have been in the colony for longer typically nest in the center of the colony where it's the safest. Younger birds that are newer to the colony have to find a territory on the outer edge where it'd be easier for a predator to target them. So additionally, there are safety in numbers. The more birds in an area, the less likely they are to be eaten, like an individual is to be eaten. This is called predator satiation. An example of this to help explain would be like if you're playing tag. You're safer from being like it if there are more people playing with you. If there's only 3 people playing, you're more likely to be tagged. So all these concepts and tactics work together, mutual nest defense, where you nest, and just the sheer number of birds in the area to help ensure the general safety of the colony. So the common predators that we've seen on Falkner Island over the years are the American crow, fish crow, black-crowned night heron, herring gulls, peregrine falcons, and great black-backed gulls. There are currently 2 major predators that cause some trouble on Falkner Island, where there's an important nesting colony of roseate and common terns. A peregrine falcon has been spotted in the area on multiple occasions over the summer. The issue with the peregrine is that it predates the adult common and roseate terns during the day. At night, a black-crowned night heron has been getting the eggs and slashing them with its beak. These predators are the one reason why the terns, both common and roseate, were not able to raise young on the island this year. But how do the terns defend themselves out on the island is the real question. So there are a multitude of ways in which terns defend themselves from predators. As a group, they'll fly up and they'll dive down towards the predator in an attempt to like scare it away. As individuals, terns will use their beaks to dive bomb a predator or will defecate on a predator from above. Sometimes they do a combination of these actions in order to effectively scare away or injure the predator. So we're going to start getting into food now, as that's an important reason as to why birds nest in colonies. But I wanted to go over what common and roseate terns eat out on Falkner Island. It would be impossible to list all of the species that roseate and common terns feed on, but the following is a good start. They eat all types of smaller fish, including but not limited to the American sand lance, bluefish, Atlantic silverside, northern pipefish, and Atlantic herring. They have been more and more frequently found to eat insects as well, such as dragonflies, so I included that. So now I'm going to go over the difference between hunting and foraging. Colonial nesting birds, specifically terns, use both hunting and foraging techniques in order to obtain their food. But what is the difference? What are the similarities? Hunting involves pursuing prey. Foraging is the act of searching for wild food sources. Although hunting and foraging seem very different, there are some key similarities. These are both ways to obtain food and gain a positive net energy. Positive net energy is when an individual is gaining energy instead of just spending it. For instance, if you were to sleep well and eat 3 well-rounded meals, you'd be more likely to have high energy level for the entire day. If you went to bed at 3 a.m. and only ate like a granola bar for lunch, you'll be tired and have no energy to do your daily activities. But why is this important? It's important because colonies help to yield better energy use for young terns. The information center hypothesis is the idea that avoiding predators is less important than sharing information amongst the birds in the colony. The information center hypothesis says that a main reason for colonial nesting is to share information mostly about food. An example of this is in younger individuals who are not great at hunting or foraging. When they are in a colony, young and inexperienced birds are able to follow the more experienced adults so that they can learn new techniques and locations to hunt and forage. Colonies and the information center hypothesis make it possible for younger terns to not have to learn, anything about hunting and foraging on their own. Instead, they can learn from the other colony members. So how do terns hunt? I included the following video of a common tern attempting to catch a fish. This has been provided by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So, colonial nesting wading birds of Connecticut. The following are all colonial nesting wading birds that nest in Connecticut. So we have the snowy egret, black-crowned night heron, glossy ibis, little blue heron, great egret, and great blue heron. And I provided some pictures. We also have the colonial nesting seabirds that are located in Connecticut. We have the common tern, least tern, roseate tern, and herring gulls. So the wrap up, predation versus information and food. If you take away one thing from this entire presentation, it should be that there are 2 schools of thought when it comes to why birds nest in colonies. These schools of thought being anti-predation and the information center hypothesis. To recap, the anti-predation hypothesis is the thought that colonial nesting evolved in order to prevent high levels of predation. The information center hypothesis is the theory that group sharing of information regarding food and foraging is what led to colonial nesting. While there's more evidence to suggest that the information center hypothesis is the main reason for colonial nesting, most believe that these are both reasons for birds to form colonies when nesting, since there's no clear difference between the importance of food and the importance of avoiding predators. Both are equally as important. So how can you get involved? There are many volunteer and citizen science programs that you can get involved with if you're interested in the fight to protect colonial nesting in Connecticut. One of the most important things that you can do for your local colonial nesters is to take care of your beaches and the Long Island Sound. And this includes not littering and picking up any trash that you may find. A quick tip to keep in mind is that we personally witnessed out on Falkner Island is that when you let a balloon go into the air, it doesn't just disappear. It may end up on a colonial nesting beach out in the Sound, and letting balloons go definitely counts as littering. So you should just keep that in mind at your next birthday party. Additionally, attending organized beach cleanups through Save the Sound, or which is a Connecticut organization, or Save the Bay, which is located in Rhode Island, it's a huge help. It's also fun and a way to make friends with the same passions as you. If you want to do more than just pick up trash, you can contact your local wildlife refuge, such as Stuart B. McKinney, or State Environmental Department, like DEEP, or the Department of Environmental Management for Rhode Island, as they typically have volunteer opportunities and citizen scientist projects where you can get out into the field and start your career as a scientist while simultaneously helping colonial nesting colonies. Another important thing that to keep in mind is combating climate change is also important to ensure that colonial nesting species are around for a while. With rising waters, rising temperatures, more intense storms, it is important to do your part by monitoring, your personal actions. Ditching single-use plastics such as water bottles is a great start. Reducing water waste by taking shorter showers and turning the sink off when you brush your teeth is equally as important. And one of the that's important, but nest disturbance, paying attention to signs when you're out on the beach, is also something to think about. There are typically signs posted near areas where colonial nesting is occurring, and it's important to read these signs, be aware of your surroundings, and make sure that you're not disturbing a colony trying to nest if you're out at the beach. So thank you very much, and I'm opening this up for questions.
So if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask away.
Keelyn, my question is, what is the extent of predation this year as compared to previous years?
So I think that this year, the problem was that there was no one out there on the island last year due to COVID. So because we didn't have that constant, that constant patrol to get rid of the predators, it was definitely increased and affected the way that they raise their young. It just wasn't possible this year. So I don't know exact numbers or like death tolls, but there were, as far as we know, no eggs that hatched. So that's probably, there was probably a way greater abundance of predation.
Thank you.
One of the ways people can get involved, another organization is the Audubon Alliance for Coastal Waterbirds here in Connecticut, which is an alliance of Audubon Connecticut, the State Office of National Audubon, and Connecticut Audubon Society, working with DEEP and Fish and Wildlife. So
Yes, of course, yes.
how many roseate tern hatchlings do we normally have on Falkner?
So again, I'm not really sure about that. I'm sure Chris will probably answer in the chat. Oh, here she goes.
30 to 60. So
30 to 60.
30 to 60 hatchlings from how many nesting pairs?
I know that when we first got out there, she said it was about at a quarter of what the population typically is. I'm waiting for her to. 3 to 50, 30 to 50, she says. 30 to 50 nesting pairs typically.
What limits that?
Prey base, she says in the chat, and predation.
Okay.
Oh, and habitat.
Anybody else have questions?
Maybe Chris would be able to answer this for me, and that would be in terms of the density of the vegetation on the island this year as compared to earlier years. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you guys so much for listening to my presentation today.
All right.
Excellent job, Keelyn.
Thank you
And,
guys.
Yep.
the recording of this will be on the Connecticut website. And on Thursday, we have the final presentation by interns. They'll be talking about sand lance. And you can register on the Connecticut website. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Keelyn.
Thank you guys.
Take care.
Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.